In this one, I'll be talking about the Canadian Frontline Nurses and what they're up to lately. And I'll be talking about their connections to different operatives in the US. And in particular, the main subjects of focus in this video are Sarah Tunian, Kristen Nagel, and Erin Marie Olzewski. So it says that the people that were at the rally, so this is the time of the fake White House insurrection. You have Nicole Siratek from Nevada, Erin Marie Olzewski from Florida, Catherine Story from California, Alex Flett from Massachusetts, as well as Sarah Tunian and Kristen Nagel, who are both part of Canadian Frontline Nurses, and they traveled from Ontario, Canada. So first, speaking about Erin Olzewski, is she mentions that she actually received psychological operations training, and she did so at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in Fort Bragg, Texas. And as well, she claims she's from Florida, and that Vice article as well claims she's from Florida, but she actually moved from Wisconsin to Florida in 2018. And it says here she focused on her undercover nurse stint in New York. I'll elaborate on that a little bit. In particular, she was on Fox News and spoke about this, supposedly went undercover in a hospital in New York, posing as a nurse. But the thing is, so she went undercover in Iraq as a nurse, which I'll get to and show. But the thing is I'm not sure when it is or if she even received official training to be a nurse, or how that even works, if I'm honest with you. So it says, many don't know, she intimately worked with Scientology's DC lobbyist Greg Mitchell, and Lincoln Project's Jonathan Lockwood. Speak a little bit about Greg Mitchell as well. And then you have Kevin Tuttle, who as well, he also served at Fort Bragg and was trained in psychological operations as well. It says he's a former Air Force public affairs officer. And as well, Kevin Tuttle, he had basically helped Erin Olzewski to orchestrate protests and the creation of several nonprofits. So here, this is where it was on Alex Jones's show that Erin Olzewski admitted to working undercover in Iraq on an Alex Jones interview in 2020, and she claimed to work in hospitals, schools, and orphanages during her tour in Iraq. And again, I'm not sure when she became a nurse, how she received training, if she did even. So there's a little bit of mystery and some gaps there in her history, unfortunately. So I mentioned Greg Mitchell and Jonathan Lockwood. So essentially here we have Greg Mitchell, a Scientology lobbyist, and George Soros ended up funding him. So a question here is, does George Soros fund activists and protests, and what is the objective of Erin Marie Olzewski? I don't know why it says Malone. So moving forward, when this loads. So what is the link between activists in Florida and in California? Well, the Mitchell firm, as I mentioned, Greg Mitchell here, lobbied for Open Society Center, which is George Soros' company. So the link between the two is actually Scientology, due to Greg Mitchell's allegiances there. And yeah, there are several different organizations in the States as well. I can't say I've investigated all of these thoroughly here. There's an array of freedom organizations in the States, just like in Canada, apparently. And we see this person, Denise Marie. She appears to be part of Antifa, or Black Lives Matter, and this is Jonathan Lockwood. As well, that name was mentioned in connection with Aaron Olzewski. So I know that Antifa and Black Lives Matter is definitely funded by George Soros. I'm not sure about the freedom fighter protests or whatever you want to call them, if that's funded by Soros or not, but we can see that he is linked to these specific cats here, these specific characters. So, moving forward, I'm now going to talk about Dell Bigtree a little bit, just for the simple fact that it was Dell Bigtree that kind of connected. It was Dell Bigtree that basically connected Aaron Olzewski to the Canadian Frontline Nurses, Sarah Chunian and Kristen Nagel, because it's essentially, basically it was implied in this document here that Sarah Chunian was in contact with Aaron Olzewski through social media, and Aaron ended up inviting Sarah and Kristen to speak at the Global Frontline Nurses event, which is where this picture comes from, advertising for that event. And Aaron was acting like as an intermediary for Dell Bigtree. And some of the big names that were in Washington that day were Dell Bigtree himself, Mickey Willis, Kevin Jenkins, and Dr. David Martin. And there were events going on the same day, but on different stages, and I'm not quite sure how they were connected. So I don't have the link in this video, but I'll leave it in the description. But Dell Bigtree was one of the names that is part of the Academy of Divine Knowledge, which was ran by Sasha Stone. Small world. And funny considering I had made a video about Sasha recently, but anyway, this particular documentary, I'm not going to say the name of here because I want to leave this video on YouTube, appears to be directed by Andrew Wakefield and written by Dell Bigtree. So, and there's a sequel to it as well. I'm not going to scroll throughout this entire article because a lot of the points are spaced out here. However, I'm going to talk about who Dell Bigtree is connected to and how he is funded. So, he has a unique background, alright? He ended up producing 32 episodes of The Doctors between 2010 to 2015. And this was basically, I think, part of a segment within the Dr. Phil show. And The Doctors is a pro-pharma show. And producers on the Dr. Phil show make roughly about $65,000 a year. So, as well, there's something called the Selz Foundation, that's S-E-L-Z, and this organization provided roughly 3/4 of its funding, and Lisa Selz serves as the group president, the public face of ICANN, which is the Informed Consent Action Network. So, Selz was providing about 3/4 of this organization's funding. However, you have Dell Bigtree, who's a former daytime television show producer, running it. So, then you have something called Lazard, which is formerly known as Lazard Frey and Company. It's a financial advisory and asset management firm that engages in investment banking, asset management, with other financial services, primarily with institutional clients. And it's the world's largest independent investment bank in principal executive offices in New York City, Paris, and London. Then, besides Lazard and Selz Foundation, you have what's called the T. Rowe Price Group, which is an American publicly owned global investment management firm. Among the 10 holdings in their health services fund, we find Thermo Fisher Scientific, who makes fraudulent sequencing machines. and then AZ. I'm not going to say the name of the particular company, but I'll just highlight it over here. This one here. And then BioNTech. And there's a few others here as well. Eli Lilly. And then a very Merck. This one, which I'm not going to say as well, because they made certain poisonous products that were used during a time of coercive measures taking place. So it's pretty interesting to see that these organizations that are large funders of big pharma are funding the Informed Consent Action Network, the ICANN, which Dell Bigtree runs. That's strange and a conflict of interest for sure. Dell, he also directed something called Partners in 2003, which is a soft porno film. It's a short film that stars Dell Bigtree's wife, Lee Nestor, and as well, he was the executive producer and director of another pornography film called Bittersweet in 2005, and in 2007 he co-produced and co-directed with his wife another pornographic film I'm not going to say the name of. It's all in this article as well. And Dell is married to Lee Colette Nestor, and Lee was born on September 23rd, 1969 in Switzerland, and she is the daughter of Peggy Nestor. So Lee is also related to Marianne Nestor, which is Dell Bigtree's wife's aunt, and Marianne, aka Dolly, was the secret wife of somebody named Oleg Cassini. I think I ended up passing him as he is an older guy down here. This is Lee Nestor over here, and then this is Oleg Cassini, and then Marianne, which is her aunt. And Oleg is actually the fashion designer, or he was the fashion designer of Jacqueline Kennedy's iconic wardrobe, or Jackie Onassis, whatever. This is significant because it establishes the start of a relationship between this family and the Kennedy family, and eventually Dell Bigtree. So therefore, in future videos, I am going to be talking about RFK Jr., and possibly even elaborating a little bit more on Dell Bigtree. So Oleg Cassini's brother Igor was married to Charlene Reitzman Cassini, and that's the daughter of Charles B. Reitman, who was the neighbor of Joseph Kennedy Sr., who is referred to as a Hollywood kingpin in this article. Joseph Kennedy Sr. is the father of RFK and JFK. So, yeah, also as well, Dell, he ends up saying in his own words that he would definitely take money from Big Pharma if he was offered it anyway. So, that just goes to show. And then here I've left some links in particular showing that Aaron Olzewski was on Fox News, and Fox spelled like F-A-U-X as in faux news, because it is nothing but fake news, of course, just one side of the political spectrum, and then you have CNN providing the other side of it. So here's an interesting TikTok video I found in particular. It ends up calling out quite a few people, some celebrities, and as well Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson end up getting called out, shown as Freemasons. So I'll let you watch that for yourself. And in particular, we see this red bracelet that Tucker Carlson has, which is a Kabbalah bracelet I'll be getting to and speaking about. And then he is doing something called the Sign of the Mark Master in Freemasonry, which you You learn this at 4th degree, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit after I talk about the red string. It's used for protection against what the Zohar terms evil eye. So the Zohar, used by the Zoroastrians, which has to do with Persian culture and my understanding. It says here, this quote from the Zohar, "A person possessed of an evil eye carries with him jealousy and envy, a destroying force. Be on your guard not to come near him. He may injure you." So it's an ancient tradition to wind a red string 7 times around the tomb of Rachel, the great matriarch. Rachel, wife of Jacob, gave birth after many barren years to 2 sons, Joseph and later Benjamin. During the year of Benjamin, Rachel passed away and was buried on the road between Jerusalem and Bethlehem in the land of Israel. Rachel evokes the element of protection from the universe. After the red string is wound around the tomb, it is endowed with mystical powers. It is then cut into pieces and worn on the left wrist. The left hand is considered by Kabbalah to be the receiving side for the body and soul. By wearing the red string on our left wrist, we can receive a vital connection to the protective energies surrounding the tomb of Rachel. So the red string is supposed to be sort of like a protective force, I guess. But the thing is, when it comes down to these dark ones, if you will, they end up just mirroring, reverting, and perverting absolutely everything. And it's just a little bit hard to tell sometimes the true intentions of things. But in the case of Tucker Carlson, who's a Freemason, shouldn't be hard to tell considering he's all about the fake news. So this right here is called the Keystone, right? And doing that same sign, the sign of the Mark Master that Tucker Carlson was doing right here. Not going to do it myself because I'll probably just get accused of being a Freemason or something. He represents holding this, the Keystone, which is a piece of knowledge. And basically, what this stands for, I'll read it and then elaborate a little further. HTWSSTKS, the Masonic Keystone, which is the Masonic mark of an ancient Grand Master. HTWSSTKS stands for Hiram, the widow's son, sent to King Solomon. All 3rd degree Freemasons studied the story of a man named Hiram Abiff, aka the widow's son. According to the legend, Hiram was chief architect for the temple of King Solomon. So what happens is there were 3 different individuals, Jubilo, Jubilah, and Jubilum. They are collectively referred to as the Jewes, Jewes. And these people basically wanted the secrets of a master mason, which Hiram Abiff refused to give up. And so the 3 of them killed him. And they used a carpenter's square and a compass, and then finally a mallet. A compass and a carpenter's square is what's used in the same symbol that you see in Freemasonry with the G. So that sign in particular that I was talking about, you learn at the 4th degree, which is what they refer to as a Mark Master. And you have to go through the first 3 degrees, which is called collectively referred to as the Blue Lodge, which is like having a white belt in martial arts, essentially. So I'm going to read Kristen Nagel's bio here, one of the co-founders of Canadian Frontline Nurses. From frontline healthcare worker to the front lines of freedom, Kristen Nagel has had a very busy 2 years. Dedicated nurse of 14 years, primarily in the neonatal intensive care unit. She has taken on a new role of activism and healthcare advocacy after being terminated from her position as a registered nurse for speaking up against the narrative. Realizing the immense harms public health measures were having on the public, she's a co-founder of Canadian Frontline Nurses, whose mission is to advocate for medical freedom, unite nurses, educate the public, and bring ethics back into healthcare. Her background in holistic nutrition has helped her understand conventional medicine, as well as whole body wellness that incorporates the mind, body, and spirit to uncover the root of illness. Kristen is a dedicated mother and homeschool teacher to her family in Ontario that drives her passion for children's health as she empowers families as live a more natural life in harmony with the earth. Okay, so now I'm going to read about Sarah Chunian here. She's been a registered nurse since 2004 and been working in a nursing home for the greater part of her career. In 2017, she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. That's basically arthritis in the back, to my understanding. This was the catalyst for her life-changing actions through natural healing. Through natural healing, she was able to get completely clean, lost 60 pounds, and healed herself from most of her fibromyalgia. Her transformation was so incredible that she decided to give back and to become a facilitator to survivors herself. She is known to be the voice of the voiceless, and she intends to keep it that way. Sarah was fired from both her nursing jobs. Her license is under investigation and has been defamed by the media for speaking out against lockdowns. She is one of the co-founders of Canadian Frontline Nurses, which is an organization aimed at uniting nurses, educating the public, and bringing the ethics back into healthcare. She's presently working on creating the mental health initiative, Lighting Up Dark Corners, created to empower people to explore the root cause of their mental health challenges and discover natural ways to heal and rise. Okay. So, interesting enough, there are a few legal battles and things going on here with Canadian Frontline Nurses, but they're presently asking for $250,000, which is interesting. I will be reading a little bit about them, and you can decide yourself, as the audience, if you would like to actually donate to this organization or not. I am personally passing. So, Ontario judge dismisses puzzling $1 million libel action by these nurses. I can't say those words in this video. Plaintiff's decision to sue defendants in first place called into question. Yes, indeed. So an Ontario judge has dismissed a $1 million libel action by 3 nurses who faced disciplinary action for their views during this PSYOP, calling the plaintiff's decision to sue puzzling and surprising. The lawsuit was dismissed by the court under Ontario's anti-SLAPP legislation. So SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation and is a legal maneuver traditionally used by the rich and powerful to intimidate, silence, and/or bankrupt opponents. Ontario introduced legislation in 2015 designed to protect against such gag proceedings from using the courts to silence expression on matters of public interest. So Kristen Nagel of London, Ontario, Crystal Pitter of Tillensburg, Ontario, and Sarah Chunian of Toronto, Ontario, and the Canadian Frontline Nurses filed their court action in December 2021, alleging the Canadian Nurses Association and independent BC news outlet Together News Inc. caused harm to their personal and professional reputations with separate online articles published in the fall of 2021. The portion of an article published by Canadian Nurses Association was quoted to support the defamation claims against the organization and leadership. Alright, so what I just read there is from this Canuck Law article. So there were a lot of questions about the anti-SLAPP motion that were raised, and this is the article, by the way, sorry, a little disorganized here. This is the article by the Canadian Nurses Association, and the thing is, this article in and of itself, it's very hard to go after somebody for defamation of character based off the very vague information that was presented in those articles, and it didn't even refer to anybody's name, like Sarah Chunian Kristen Nagel, nothing. There were no names mentioned in it. And then there was this other article from Comox Valley. While this one did mention the plaintiffs by name, it appeared to be referencing for the most part quotes that they had made. And while the January 6th comment seems out of place, it's difficult to see how these would lead to $1 million damages. So, a lot of thoughts here, but some of the points brought up by Canuck here is Canadian Nurses Association statement didn't refer to the plaintiffs, and words themselves are not defamatory. Qualified privilege and responsible communication on matters of public interest, excuse me. There was truth in both of the articles. No malice, no damages incurred, and fair commentary. So, yeah, all in all, this whole thing, it doesn't look very good because these Canadian Frontline Nurses, if you will, they're suing for defamation of character, and there was vague information even presented in some of the articles. And as well, if you're part of a so-called freedom organization and you're tackling a sort of mainstream narrative, you're widely opening yourself up to criticism. So trying to sue for people criticizing just literally makes a whole movement look bad. Makes you look like more tyrannical than anything in particular. Like you actually have more in common with Justin Trudeau than you probably care to admit. So there are 4 different cases taking place at the same time having to do with the Attorney General, and you have the Canadian Frontline Nurses, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Canadian Constitution Foundation, and Jeremiah Jost. I'm not sure who that is. So these 4 things will likely be heard at the same time, as these kinds of things are not uncommon. But from the looks of things, it seems that Ottawa will be challenging these cases over mootness and standing. Mootness means that the issues are no longer live and can't be litigated, and standing refers to a party's ability to bring a case in the first place, and whether or not they have a real interest in it. So that's what I basically got to say about the Canadian Frontline Nurses, but I want to talk just a little bit about Kabbalah, Freemasonry, and Tucker Carlson a little bit, is that he is very much part of the deception, just very much wearing blue, conservative colors, or, yeah, what we would call conservatives in Canada, but he is basically playing the Republican role for the Americans that are watching, and then you have CNN playing the other side. And fact of the matter, too, is that Tucker Carlson has been a gatekeeper in different times of his career, and I'll leave some of those links in the description here, but he has twisted around the narrative of 9/11, and I think it's really interesting wearing a Kabbalah bracelet for the simple fact that in the Kabbalah you have what's called the Sephirothic Tree of Life, which have these 11 dots on it. They refer to them as Sephirot, but 10 of them represent the so-called 10 stages of life, and the 11th is for God or Elohim, Yahweh, which really just lead to a jinn. In the Key of Solomon, you have something called the Tetragrammaton, which has 72 different names, and 72 out of those 72 names, 2 of them are Elohim and Adonai. And Elohim is sometimes on the 11th spot, and Elohim, while in the Bible you look at them as a high class of angels, this is just one of the simple names for the Tetragrammaton. And as well, Adonai being a name for the Tetragrammaton. The reason why I bring that up is because it's a very loose translation for Lord, because Jewish people, they generally don't use names like Yahweh, or they use an indirect term to refer to God, because that name is considered sacred. So you have the term Adonai for Lord to refer to Yahweh. And then Jehovah is one of the other names that is used as one of the other names, the Tetragrammaton. But more closely, going back to the whole aspect of the Kabbalah, is with 9/11. Okay, it says in the Kabbalah that it's a blasphemy to mention more or less than 10 Sephiroth, specifically referring to 9 or 11. And again, Tucker has been a gatekeeper revolving around that subject. So, and you have two different towers, Tower 1, Tower 2, and then Building 7. 1 plus 2 plus 7 is 10, like the 10 stages of life in the Kabbalah. So, anyway, I think I've said more than enough and kind of added a little bit of a ramble there at the end. But if you have any sort of questions, please feel free to ask. And I'll do what I can looking into the States and all that, considering most of my information is Canadian-based or Canuck-based, if you will. So I'll be looking into the Kennedys in future videos and be talking about Dell Bigtree and some of those connections as well in further detail. So, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.